Hey y'all, welcome back to Unfiltered Truth. If you're new here, thank you for checking me out. If you're returning, thank you so much for supporting me. If you're listening to me on Spotify, you can find the video versions of these episodes on YouTube at Unfiltered Truth 7. If you're watching on YouTube and it's more convenient for you to listen to the audio only version, you can find me at Unfiltered Truth on Spotify. Today's episode is called Grow Where You Are Planted. This is a phrase that many of us have heard, I'm sure, time and time again. And I can think of so many different scriptures that reiterate this point, like especially Paul when he's talking about being content in all things, wherever you are, finding, joy and gratitude in that moment, in that space, in that circumstance. But I want to use a different scripture for what we're talking about today. And it comes from Psalms 1, verses 1 through 3. 1 and 2 are really just for context, but the emphasis is on verse 3. So it says, "Oh, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers, but they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They are like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do." Okay, so growing where you're planted, to me, and this is my opinion based on experiences that I've had in real life. Growing where you're planted means no matter what's going on, no matter the situation, the circumstance, the relationship, find lessons to learn. Like, open your eyes and open your heart to learn the lessons that God is trying to teach you in that season or in that moment, in that place, in that relationship, whatever it is that's going on. So many times when things get uncomfortable for us, we just want to run away. We want to go somewhere else. We feel like it's greener, the grass is greener on the other side type stuff. And so, we just want to hurry up and get out of a situation or out of a relationship, out of a job, out of whatever experience, so that we can move on to greener pastures, so to speak. But there are so many times where we're in these difficult spots, we're in these difficult relationships, and God is trying to teach us something. He's trying to show us something. He's trying to help us be better, a better person, a better version of ourselves, or just simply better prepared for our next season, our next chapter, the next thing that he's moving us to, the next place, the next relationship that he blesses us with, the next job that he blesses us with, whatever it is. He's trying to help us learn something to become better, so then we are prepared for the next thing that we step into, whatever that might be. The best example I can give about this, I have several situations that I've been in that were like this, but probably one of the best examples I can give is when I was going through an unhealthy marriage. So, out of respect, I won't give too many details away, but basically, it was a very unbalanced situation, very one-sided in a lot of ways. Um, Not just emotionally, but also financially. There were a lot of things that were, very difficult. And because I had two small children at the time, literally in Pampers, both of them, I was doing everything that I could to make that thing work, to make that thing shake, as we say. So I was doing everything I could to keep it solid, keep it right, try to fix what was broken and things like that. But what I have learned, not just in relationships, but in jobs, in all different kinds of situations, we can only control ourselves. We can't control the people around us. We can't control the job, or, whether the environment, the work environment is hostile or toxic or what have you. We can't control that type of stuff. We can't control the energy within our home if another person is committed to a certain type of frequency. Okay, that may have went over some people's heads. Okay, so let me break it down in case it needs to be broke down. The way that we think and feel about ourselves and about our situations determines our energy that we emit. Okay. Like you can walk into a room, somebody can be in a funky mood and you can pick it up right away. All right. The reason why is because their thoughts, their moods, their emotions, everything that they got going on within them is emitting from them. So you're able to feel all of that negative energy that they have going on inside of them from the outside. Okay. And it fills the room. This is just like how you can walk into a room and know that there was a very thick, intense conversation that you interrupted when you walked in. People get quiet. Yes, they get quiet, but it's not the quiet or the silence that draws your attention to the energy. It's the energy that you feel. You feel awkward. You feel like you just interrupted something. You feel the tension in the air. When people say the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the vibration in the atmosphere. Okay. So let's go back to this situation. All right. So when you're in a lopsided or unhealthy type of dynamic, whether that be a environment or a job or a relationship or just a situation in general, whatever it might be, um, it's important to first realize like what can you control and what is outside of your control. Okay. And the things that are outside of your control, sometimes, like I said, we just want to hurry up and exit. We want to hurry up and end stuff or whatever. But in some situations, it's so much more complicated than that. When I was married, and my children were very small, and I had the realization that this was a very toxic situation that I was in, and I needed to do something that I could do in order to rectify it. Okay. So first I did everything that I could to try to remedy the relationship. But again, I can only handle stuff on my side. I can't do the other person's work. I can't make them see things the way that they are affecting the whole family, unless that's what they choose to do, unless they choose to see things with an open heart, an open mind, and see the bigger picture of how actions, are affecting the entire picture, entire family rather. So, doing what I could in that moment, and what I mean is like, if there was something that I felt or that my husband at the time communicated, regardless of how I felt about it, I respected his feelings and I tried to honor his request the best that I could, regardless of how I felt about it. There was no pushback, and another episode that will be coming up in the future is called The Power of Submission. But there is power in submission, regardless of whether that person is, trying to, whatever, just have control over you or what have you. They're still like, I don't want to give all of that away because that's another episode coming up. But basically, what I want to try to hint on is that, allowing the gardener to be the gardener. Okay, if they failed, then they failed, but you let them be the gardener. You didn't jump into their lane as the flower and then you try to water yourself or you try to garden yourself or whatever. Like, so if he was telling me that, he wanted something, he needed something or whatever, or, really he just had a request or preference or something like that, I tried to honor that as best I could, regardless of how I felt, about it, regardless, whether I thought it was, whatever I thought about it, it really didn't matter because at the end of the day, we was married. And so he needs to be happy. He deserves to be happy. And so do I. And, if he's happy, then, that could help me be more happy and then therefore affect our whole family in a positive way. Okay. In a normal situation, that's what it would be like. Okay. In a toxic situation, though, what happens is you do everything that you can and then it's still not enough. Or you do everything that you possibly can and that person is still committed to jeopardizing the situation or damaging the situation or, being how they are. Okay. So, Another example is, like I said, working in a hostile work environment. I've worked in several of those. So, in a hostile work environment, same situation. You are doing the best that you can to keep your peace of mind while you are at work. So, if your boss tells you to do something that you don't like, you do it. Okay. Now, if it's ridiculous, you think it's stupid, it's a waste of time, there's a better way to do it, or it's just an unnecessary thing to do, guess what? None of that matters, because at the end of the day, your boss had told you to do something. You got to do it. It don't matter how you feel about it. Okay. Now, maybe one day, as you submit it to your boss may realize, like, oh, dang, that was dumb. I shouldn't have had them do that. That was a waste of time and it didn't get us nowhere. So now, joke's on me. I made the wrong choice. Okay. So sometimes, that is the power of submission. I feel like I'm blending two episodes together. That's not really what I'm trying to do at all, but I'm trying to make a point. So sometimes the person that is, like in charge of the environment, or the other person involved in the situation, or the other person involved in the relationship, they may have some demands, some requests, some preferences, some, suggestions, some whatever it is. Okay. And, just out of respect, just out of doing the right thing, just out of, having your conscience clear, it is best, in my experience, to go ahead and meet that person halfway, compromise with that person. Go ahead and give a little. Even if you don't necessarily agree, understand, or what have you, if it's going to keep peace in the environment, if it's going to keep peace in the relationship, give it a shot. Okay. When I was married, I looked at marriage as like a lifetime commitment. Like, there is no divorce unless you laying hands on me, unless you not laying hands, let's say putting hands, unless you putting hands on me, unless you are cheating on me, there's no reason for us to separate or divorce. That's how I felt, at the time. That was before I learned about all the different forms of abuse, though. I don't really want to get heavy into all of that right now, but there was one aspect that I had not considered because I was unaware. So, what do you do when you realize that the situation you're in, or the environment you're in, or the relationship you're in is unhealthy, it's lopsided, it's toxic, it's not good for you, it's not good for your spiritual well-being, your mental health, your emotional health and well-being, physical health and well-being? What do you do in those situations? Okay. The first thing that I personally do is ask God, what is he trying to show me? Rather than jumping straight into victim mode and pointing fingers and blame at everybody else around me. Oh no, look what they did to me, yada, yada, yada. I look within. What did I do to put myself in this situation? What is God trying to show me or help me learn in this situation or in this season? And then, at that point, I'm still. I'm just still. I make myself be still so I can listen and I can hear what it is he's trying to show me or teach me in that moment. So when I was in the situation with my ex-husband, after I felt that I had done everything that I possibly could do to meet everything that he wanted me to do, I knew that I was doing everything that he said he wanted, yet he was still, it still wasn't right. So, at that point, it's like, all right, how did I get here? I knew the answer to that because I had not really put in solid work on healing my childhood wounds with my biological father. So that is how I attracted that experience. I attracted someone that was a lot like my birth father when I got married. not even realizing that that was the case. I'm thinking because he wasn't physically abusive, he wasn't really like my father. But in real life, he was a lot like him. That was the only difference, was that he was not putting hands, pretty much. So, realizing that, it's like, okay, I get how I got here. Now what do I do about it? Okay. So the next thing was, sitting still to get some direction on that. All right. Remembering how I felt as a toddler, the same age as my kids at the time, how I felt in that situation when my mom was married to my real dad, my biological father. I felt, helpless, and I felt like I wanted her to just take us out of that environment because it wasn't good for any of us. It wasn't good for her, for me, or for him. Okay. So when I was like 3, I suggested to her, hey, let's just get our own place separate from dad and, live life or whatever. My mom was all about that. She was just, she was really staying there for me like most parents do. And once I told her, let's go, then we left like that next day. So, when my situation was the way that it was, and my children were also, there looking at me, and my oldest son at the time gave me this look, the same look that I gave my mom when I was his age, and it freaked me out. And I was like, oh my goodness, here we are. And how did I get here? That was the first thing I thought. How did I even get here? And so when I sat with myself and realized, like, I brought this on myself because I did not heal this wound from stuff that I had gone through in the past with my biological father. So that's how we got here. Okay, now I remember when, these are my thoughts. I remember when I looked at my mom that way, in the way that she handled it. Okay. But it was more so what I said to my mom at that time. I remember watching, because my biological father made me watch him abuse my mom. So I remember looking, with that same look in my eyes several times, but because there was so much going on, I don't know whether that look was seen or not. Okay. And that's no fault or blame, shade on any of that. I'm just saying. Okay. But when my son looked at me, I recognized it right away. I saw it right away, and saw it for what it was. A few days after that, I had a vision of what life would be like if I stayed. 10 years later, what would the boys be like? What would the climate in the house, what would the vibe in the house be like? What would be going on in the house? How would all these men, because we have, my ex-husband and 2 sons, how would these men treat me if I were to stay for, another 10 years or so? And what I saw was not anything that I wanted to see. I didn't want my kids to think that that's what love looked like. I did not want my kids to think that that's how they should treat their wife. And I did not want my kids to become disrespectful towards me because they thought that I was the one that should be treated in a certain way. So at that point, I had to get my strategy together, for exiting that situation. I knew that I had to leave, but I knew that it was not quite time to leave yet because I had to get some things in order. The first thing I needed to get in order was not my physical stuff, but my mental and emotional stuff. I had to heal from that situation while I was still in it so that I could be prepared to move on to a healthier situation in the future. I was not trying to rush into a new relationship. I wasn't talking to nobody on the side. Nobody cheated on nobody. It wasn't nothing like that. Okay. But it was an unhealthy situation, a very lopsided dynamic. And I had done everything that I could possibly do. And at this point, it was time for me to pull me and my sons out of that situation so that we could all 4 of us, have a better outcome. So, I made it my priority to make sure that I focused on my mental and emotional well-being so that when we did finalize the divorce, I would be completely sound and in my right mind when I was raising my children, or, going into that stage of becoming a single mom. You know, um, thank goodness for my parents who were extremely supportive during that time, especially my mom, because she had gone through what she went through with my real dad. She was able to kind of help me deal with some of that emotional baggage. That's the best way to say it, and kind of sort through all of those things, and just give me the support that I needed to be in a better space once that ended. And I'm so happy that I did that. I decided to leave the marriage probably like a year and a half before we actually filed and all of that stuff. And the reason for that, like I said, I needed to be in the best space possible, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, so that I could be there and be solid for my children. I did not want to drag them into my emotional woes, coming off the heels of a unhealthy marriage. So I wanted them to feel like everything was steady, everything is stable, everything is consistent, and this is just the only difference. And I also wanted to do it while they were very young, so that this would not result in like too many bad memories for them. I didn't want them to store core memories of, bad situations. Again, there were no violent fights or yelling and cussing, and we didn't do none of that. Okay. But that doesn't mean that just because you're not yelling and cussing and throwing hands and cheating, that your relationship is healthy. It was not a healthy relationship. Okay. So, that's just what needed to be done for everyone involved. Okay. Now I have this plant that I'm going to use as an illustration. Okay, so yeah, she looking a little sad. All right. This is a spring cactus. So, when I got her, she was looking all lovely, and her leaves were all shiny and firm, and they were not limp like this, and they had flowers that had bloomed all on the tips and stuff. They were hot pink, and she was so cute, right? She's in this little bitty pot because she was a baby. All right. Now, since then, she has bloomed. Here go one of her flower petals that had came off. I'm gonna save that for a point later. Okay, anyways, so she has bloomed her flowers have gone away and all of that. Now, one thing about these plants, you cannot water them while the flowers are in bloom. This is a succulent, if you did not know that, and they don't do well with a lot of water, period. But when they are in their flowering, blooming state, they are so pretty, but that is also one of the most fragile stages that they come in, that they are in ever. So it's important not to harm them by watering them while the flowers are blooming. So I had to wait until the flowers kind of fell off before I could water it again. Okay, so now what happens if I were to water this plant? The water would just run straight through. It would just go straight through. Okay. The reason why is because it has outgrown this pot. So if I pull it out, you can see the roots all around. You can see the roots underneath. All right. So when I put it in this pot, if I were to try to water it, the water is just going to go straight through. None of it's going to soak into the roots. None of it's going to nourish this plant. All right. So sometimes, we grow, yes, where we're planted, and then eventually we will outgrow our container, or we will outgrow our environment. We will outgrow a relationship. We will outgrow a situation. Okay. Now, I am the gardener of this plant. This plant cannot do anything for itself. It relies on me, much like we are plants and rely on God. As I said before, we're a lot like plants because we need sunlight and water and all the great things, right? Okay, so in this case, I know that I need to repot this plant, and I knew this a while ago, okay? But I could not just have replanted it right after I watered it. The last time I watered it and the water just ran through, I couldn't have just taken it out right then and repotted it, because it would have been too much shock for the plant at one time. Again, succulents specifically don't like a whole lot of water. And so when you water them, they again become fragile. You have to leave them alone for a while. You can't give them too much water, and you just have to let them be. You can't move them around a lot and different things like that. And when you repot them, it's best not to water them the same time that you repot them and all of that. So I had to let this plant dry out intentionally. I had to starve it from what it wanted most. What it wants most is water, but I have to starve it out so that I can lift it up like this and be able to pull it out. You can see how the roots are a little tiny, and that makes them fragile. So if I were to just pull it out and put it in there right away, I could damage the roots. So I have to wait until it's all the way dry, and then that way when I pull it out, it's in one clump like this, and I can just kind of smash it a little, and the dirt will move away from the roots. So then it can be potted in healthier soil, new soil, and then it will have the nutrients that it needs going straight to the roots again. Okay. So the other thing that is cool about plants that have flowers, when these little petals come off, there are seeds inside, and that is what creates a new, like a new baby plant next to it. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, maybe you can a little bit right here. You can see there are 3 little plants in here that came together to make one. That's how that happens. The flowers grow, fall off, and the seeds go down into the soil, and then up comes a new plant. Okay, so all of that is important because we grow where we're planted. We do the best that we can. We bloom where we're planted, and then we do the best that we can do with, we bloom in basically fruits. The fruits of the spirit are obvious to other people. People can see us being, like going through long suffering and maintaining a positive outlook, being uplifting to others despite what's going on with us, holding on to faith and, just different things like that. Okay. So, they can see our fruits of the spirit and all that. Now, when we're in an environment where we grow the most that we can, we have already bloomed, and nobody is like benefiting from these fruits that we have, then it's like those fruits fall, the seeds fall out, and then we're trying to sprout up a new plant, but we become too, like it's not the right fit anymore. Sometimes our environment, our container is just not suitable for us to sprout up a new plant, a new young baby plant next to us. There is no way that this plant is going to grow at all, anything, not new leaves, not flowers, nothing in this pot. As long as I keep it in this container, it's not going to grow anything. It's not even going to hold on to water. It's going to die if I keep it in here. Okay. So I have to take it out and I have to put it in a larger container like this one, but I can't just keep it like this and put it in there. I have to break this soil off of these roots. I have to put new soil in here that is going to have the nutrients that this plant needs so that it can thrive. And then I have to wait a little while before I can even water it because I don't want to overwhelm it. Why am I telling you all of this? Because that's how God does us. Sometimes we outgrow a situation, a circumstance, a relationship, an environment, and God can't just pull us out right away. Yes, we've learned all the lessons. Yes, we've already bloomed. Yes, we've shown who we truly are in a given situation, but it's still not time to move. And when it is time to move, he will make it painfully obvious to us that there is no more life left if we stay in this spot. And once we get to that point, and it's so obvious, we've asked him time and time again, show me what you want me to do, whether you want me to leave, whether you want me to stay, show me what you want me to do, make it plain, make it clear. He will make it extremely clear. You have nothing else that you can do except repot yourself. You need to replant yourself in a better environment, in a better relationship, in a better situation, whatever it is. You need to take all that old dirt off, and you need to nurture your soil, nurture your roots, and you need to take care. Okay. When you let God do what he needs to do to guard your life and make sure that you are in the right situations, circumstances, relationships, environments, he will move you to the place where you need to go. He will make sure that that environment is conducive to your growth. It is healing, it is healthy, and it will help you be whole. Okay. But he can only do that if you allow him to do that. And it all begins with that very first step of, what are you trying to show me from this? What do I need to learn from this? Once you comb and rake back and forth and you make sure that you have learned absolutely everything that there is to learn, he will stop giving you lessons to learn. He will make it painfully obvious that it is now time to go, and he will move you. So on that note, I just ask you to continue growing where you're planted and let God lead the way.